Welcome into the Husker247 Podcast as Nebraska football returns this week to action on the road against Indiana. I am Mike Schaefer, joined by Michael Bruns, Brian Christopherson. We are Husker247, and we are here to recap the bye week. We're here to recap the first 6 weeks of the season, preview the next 6 weeks of the season, maybe a little Nebraska, Indiana, but we do have the Hypecast coming later this week where we will dive more fully into that game. Gentlemen, how did you enjoy your bye week? Give me one thing that you did or accomplished on your bye week. Michael Bruns.
I got some gutters fixed, and I survived a trip to a pumpkin patch. Those were two big items.
What was the highlight of the pumpkin patch?
Let's see. My family listens to this podcast. I would say quality time with my family.
Wow.
Because I can't say leaving, but no, I think they've got lots of tube things. Here's what I appreciate about a pumpkin patch, a good one. There always seems to be just a little bit of danger involved with everything that's happening there. Like things aren't quite.
Your kid might fly off the hay rack ride.
Yeah, there's enough rust to really kind of mess you up if you're not careful. You always get the dust in the sinuses, which always feels great. So that it always feels like you're just kind of on the edge of just chaos, which I appreciate. And that's not even like a haunted pumpkin patch situation.
PC, how was your bye week? Give me one thing that you did or accomplished.
Well, we went on a little trip with the missus, and that went well. Still care about each other, and that's always good when you go on a trip with your significant other. You know, it can go both ways, and it went the right way. So that was positive. So that right there to me is the
relationship building is BC's answer. Also fraught with danger.
Yeah.
Also fraught with danger, like a pumpkin patch.
When
I don't know about the rust, but
when you have a lady that appreciates the opportunity of the bye week too and understands it, like, okay, here's an opening, and they get that this is like part of the schedule of when you do things, that's always a real quality trait to find in our particular profession. So shout out to sweet Carissa.
There we go. Very nice. Does she listen?
No.
Okay. Well, she'll never know, but that's all right. I went to Vegas and lost every sports bet I made, which I didn't even think was possible, but I managed to achieve it in a short amount of time. I lost every, whether it was NFL, the baseball playoffs, prop bets, money lines, spread coverages, parlays, all of it. I managed to lose every single bet. I also watched the dealer run, I think, 5 or 6 cards starting with a 2 to a 21 against my 20, and that's when I knew that it was time to leave. So that's what I managed to do during my bye week as well. I know Rhule spoke during the bye week. He spoke as well on Monday. What did Nebraska accomplish during their bye week, Brents?
Well, they got healthy a little bit, and they also, and this is kind of what I'm eager to see. It was around this time last year where James Williams became a thing. And I don't know that there's a James Williams on another James Williams, kind of an unknown this year. But the way that Nebraska practiced during the bye week, they kind of broke it up where it was like one day of nothing but young guys, kind of a mix of young and old guys, the old guys, and then like the people who are traveling to the game in Indiana got their own day working against the scout team. So I'm eager to kind of hear a little bit more about that, but I'm also curious to see if you see a potential bigger role for somebody, or somebody pops up on that travel roster that you're kind of like, oh, that's not somebody I was really expecting to be there. So that was kind of the biggest thing, I think. And it sounds like Tommy Hill is trending in a positive direction, and Tristan Alvano kicked yesterday. So that's those are two notable things to me.
And going back to what you said initially, is there, and I'll actually throw this to Brian for the question, is there a position group where it seems like it's feasible for someone new to kind of emerge that we haven't really seen much this season? Like when you think about it from that perspective, is there a spot on the field where maybe Nebraska is not necessarily lacking, but could receive a boost if somebody were to emerge, Brian?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question.
Thank you. I didn't write it down at all, and then I just gave it to you cold.
Maybe Bruns has someone in particular in mind. I think there's guys who we've seen glimpses of who I wonder, like, if you could see more. Like, I think of like a Willis McGahee or somebody like that.
Kind of who I was thinking of as well.
Yeah. Wide receiver, is always interesting if someone else can pop up. Although I was just having this discussion with someone else. This is also that point in the year sometimes too when it gets narrowed down, right? Like you do get that guy who pops up, but it also is like, okay, it gets very like, okay, these are the 4 or 5 receivers and that you trust the most, and it kind of sticks with that rotation. So that will be an interesting sidebar, what Bruns is talking about, though. I do think there could be somebody whose snap count rises. One of them is not a newcomer by any means, but Javen Wright, you think of how his snaps have been building, and Bruns has talked to him a couple times since he's been back. And Rhule said this week, like, this could be a 30 to 35 snap kind of game for him. Like, you can see how he would fit well against what they want to do against Indiana and could match up. So this could be a nice game for Javen to kind of take that next step after his recovery. I think he's got his feet under him a little bit, and to see where that goes.
BC, anything else stand out from the Matt Rhule presser on Monday?
Well, I mean, sort of along that topic, I thought when he was talking about special teams and he was discussing personnel a bit and how they maybe played some younger guys in some certain spots, and maybe you analyze and refresh that a little bit. It was some guys who are out there and some who aren't. So I wonder if there could be a few changes within the operation of special teams at specific spots. I thought the clock management thing was interesting, especially after a Saturday that was filled with conversations about teams that didn't do it well and teams that did. And it's something Nebraska's paying close attention to with Sean Patton, and they have 2 outside sources that give them information on what to do in certain things. And that's going to be a big part of the finish of this season. There's going to be a game somewhere in this 6-game stretch, or 2 games, that is, I think, going to be decided by like who plays it the best in those final 2.5 minutes of a half and knows how to work it the best and steals an extra snap or keeps the other team from getting that extra snap. So that's going to be, I think that was a preview topic of something that is going to matter very much in one of these October-November games.
Did you catch when he mentioned that there's clock management podcast that he listens to?
Yeah, we got to get in on that.
I was like,
he said he listens to one. Yeah.
I mean, I get in the weeds on some things, but I don't know that I get that out there. Like just 30 minutes of talking clock management. Maybe that's good.
It fascinates me because at least through the glimpse of his time at Nebraska, I don't feel like Nebraska has been particularly good at end game situations. And it's not always just the clock management. It feels like he's often somewhere between I want to be aggressive and I don't want to be aggressive at all. I think they basically let the clock run out on themselves against Wisconsin last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it fascinates me. I mean, I think it's a good sign overall that he's in depth on this, that he is in the weeds. I guess what I want to see is how does it translate when they are in these situations again? Because I just, you go to last November and you can choose any of those 4 games against Michigan State through Iowa. And there's something in there where you're like, okay, I'm not quite sure what they're trying to achieve here because they did the opposite. Like I am really fascinated when Nebraska gets into this just to see what it looks like.
Yeah, no question. I'm with you, Schaefer. I thought there were a couple last year that if you said yay or nay, I'd say nay on. So can you flip that? Because I definitely think, and it could happen this Saturday, there's going to be a moment where, and it's not just under 2 minutes. It's like how he brought up an example from his NFL days, but how you use a timeout before the 2-minute warning, or 2-minute timeout, I guess we're calling it in college football. All that stuff is really going to matter. Like, and even I'm not saying I'm pro this, but like it sounds like Dan Lanning, like against Ohio State, like intentionally maybe had 12 on the field or whatever, and used that.
Felt intentional to me to take
Yeah,
time
so
off the clock with a minimal punishment.
yeah. So I mean, stuff like that. There's going to be
Gamesmanship.
coaches who are looking for that extra thing, and at the end of the day, it's did you win or did you lose, and how'd you get it? People aren't going to get all caught up, and if like if you were the choir boy about it. So I just think they've got to be really savvy with that down the stretch, especially when we already know that there's a fine line with the field goal situation, which everybody's very anxious about.
Yeah, absolutely. Any Brunt, any other things that you want to get to from Rhule, or are we good to kind of move ahead off of the Monday presser?
One other thing that I was writing about this morning. What did you make, Brian, of his comments about the running game? Because like it was kind of like a nice time, I think, to pause and self-scout for the program. And the ability to run or not run, and not having big plays, I think, is probably towards the top of the list of maybe what they wanted to look at. But what did you make of his comments about that topic?
Obviously, he's hit more on the can they get those house call type plays, right? I mean, more the home run explosives. I'm as interested, and I'm curious what you guys think. Can they get more runs to me that go from like 2 or 3 yards to like 8 to 10 yards? Like that's actually the thing that intrigues me the most in the second half of the season. And yes, you do need a few more sprinkled in where a guy makes a person at the second level miss and a 10-yard becomes a 50. But I'd like to see even more of those medium runs, I guess, than we have to this point. I don't have the number right in front of me. Nebraska's, if you would count explosive plays of 10 yards or more, I think Nebraska has 86 of them, but it's almost all air driven through the passing game. I mean, that's more common, but Nebraska's pretty low on the 10-yard plus run game stat. And so I'd love to see more in that 10 to 15 yard range where I know you can't get them all the time, but just a few more where one pops where you're getting 3, 4, and then all of a sudden, oh, he went for 12. Like, I don't feel like there's been enough of those, but it seems like he was stressing more of the home run stuff.
Yeah, it definitely feels like Nebraska's offense these last few weeks, especially, has struggled to generate really an explosion, and not just like the down the field stuff. It's even just intermediate has been hard. They've really had to grind out long drives to score that require you to avoid having those pratfall plays and to stay on schedule and all of these different things. And some of that has been, I think, execution. Some of that is just they haven't had guys make plays when they've had opportunities to. I go to that final drive against Rutgers, and I'm still puzzled as to why they had to punt there, because they had 2 openings for Emmett Johnson. He missed the hole on first down and second down. And then I still have no idea why the play is designed to go to Ja'Cory Barney, and Dylan Raiola didn't make that throw. So it's not just what's being called, it's also the individual moments happening inside of it. And the run game is a big part of that. I mean, you can see they just don't have a lot of explosion coming out of it. And I think, to me, a big part of that is their offensive line can't get off the first level. They can't block through the first level of guy to get to the second. So the linebackers and defensive backs are sitting on you right around yards 3, 4, 5. So it's hard to get to that second level because there's not necessarily always lanes that allow for it. And, when they have, it's usually been Emmett Johnson or Dowdell has shook a guy right at the line of scrimmage and then is able to get 8 to 12 yards after it. So it's a problem that's going to take a lot to kind of fix, I think, for this run game to be better and to be reliable. And right now, I think it's okay. Like, that's how I would describe the run game. It's just okay. I don't think it's a strength. I don't think it's the biggest weakness that Nebraska has, but it's just not. I don't think it's helping your offense enough, which puts a lot of pressure on your passing game, and in particular, a lot of pressure on Dylan Raiola to be better.
I have a number. I looked it up while you're talking. So Nebraska has 25 rushes of 10 yards or more. That ranks 90th. They have
I was going to say that has to be low.
Yeah, that's 90th. They have 61 pass plays of 10 yards or more. Now, you expect the pass plays to skew higher than the run plays on a stat like that, of course, but that ranks 40th, like in pass plays of 10 yards or more. So they, with amongst their peers, they do way better with that, obviously. And they only have 6 runs of 20 yards or more, which is, that's what Rhule's talking about there.
While we're talking about offense, I want to ask you guys this, because when I sit and I think about it, one of the things that has surprised me this year, and I'm switching over to the passing game, and they have all of, they're 40th in what you're describing for pass plays over 10 yards. They don't have a lot of plays where guys just get to run. Like, I'd be curious how low their yak totals are relative to their peers, because it feels like a lot of it for them are you get the catch, you get hit, you go out of bounds, that kind of thing. I mean, can you think of a lot of plays this season where a guy has caught the ball in space and then runs for an additional 25 yards? Or even 20 yards or 15 yards? It just, I feel like their yak totals have to be pretty low.
Yeah, early on, it felt like there was more of it than what you've had the last few weeks. I mean, most of it would probably have to be Barney, and I'm eager to see if they can unlock something again with Nair, because it feels like that's like what you're describing is what he brings to the table. And I mean,
Lloyd too.
There's been some. It feels like there's been a little bit of a shift though too, where it was like at the start of the year where you're facing defenses that are a little bit more non-Big Ten, and basically like non-conference schedules a pretty good break-even point. I think it felt like it was more Nair on like the deep stuff, the over-the-middle stuff, where they were able to find that a little bit more, and not much Jamal Banks. And it's felt like as maybe the secondaries have tightened up a little bit during conference play. And I think Illinois' secondary and I think Rutgers' secondary were pretty good, I would say, for what Nebraska's seen so far. It's felt like those have been a little bit more of like a Jamal Banks kind of thing, where it's like generally making contested catches, kind of like the big ass man, the big hands catches, those types of things. I don't know if that's what it feels like. I don't know if that's actually true, but I agree. I mean, I think, Lloyd, Barney, you can put in that category too, Nair, all those guys are, if you can get a little bit more after the catch, that would be a really big thing for Nebraska, because a little bit more chunkiness in the offense, I think, would be a good thing,
way.
Especially when, we're having this conversation about having to really grind out yards on the ground.
I've got 3 questions for you guys to finish this thing up. We got a bit of a shorter podcast today. And so we'll start the first question, kind of looks back. I would like a different player from each of you. It can be either side of the ball, it can be special teams. Give me one player that you feel like we'll go surprised you in the first 6 games this season. You can use surprise however you want. It can be surprise you as in they got to another level, surprise you and you didn't think this player was good and they are. However you want to do it. We will start with Brian Christopherson.
Thanks. Let's see.
You're welcome. I'm giving you the easy one today.
I can go if you want. You want a minute to think about it?
I do want a minute.
Brunch tags in.
I'll get up on the tee. No, I think Sierra Wright has surprised me. I mean, I think from what we had heard from some of the folks that cover USC, it was, a guy that was generally talented who wasn't able to kind of click and make it happen at USC. He was around the team a little bit towards the end of his tenure, not around the team a little bit. Like it sounded very precarious about what that was going to look like at Nebraska. Fast forward to when he's having to step in for Tommy Hill, and I think he's been everything that you would kind of hope he would be. He's been dependable. He's been physical. I think he's been really good and tight in coverage. I think I think coming into it, the thought was, well, everybody was terrible at USC on defense last year. And I think there's some truth to that. But I mean, the fact that you've lost arguably your best, or haven't had arguably your best defensive player for a couple of weeks, and you can't even tell, I mean, that's a huge credit to him. He's a black shirt now, as he should be as a starting corner. And I think his emergence too has also given Nebraska a little bit of flexibility in that secondary if they want to move pieces around, if they want to play different matchups. And the next two opponents are going to have to you're going to have some of that. You're going to need extra defensive backs. You're going to be playing against very good skill talent. So I think his emergence has really surprised me. I think you'd hope that he would be good, but I think he's exceeded those expectations by quite a distance.
Yeah, I think Jalen Lloyd and Fedoni are two guys I thought would probably have a little bit more production at this point for various reasons. We were a little bit spoiled last year by Lloyd with the fact that, I mean, just his numbers were sort of an outlier as far as how stats usually go with those 3 home run plays that, made a lot out of like 6 or 7 catches. And he's been close on a couple. Like he lost a 50-50 ball that was like 50 yards that could have been to his name. He just gets tripped up on the fake punt that could have been like a 60-70 yarder. So I bring him up because I'm a little surprised he hasn't had maybe one, I'd say 3 or 4 more plays than he has after sort of seeing him pop up in videos all off season. That said, he could be, you're talking about guys who could emerge like his second half, and maybe that's another question, but
it is.
I'll come up with someone else, but it
doesn't have to be emerge, but yeah.
He definitely could do that though. Like he could be a guy like on Saturday where Jalen Lloyd, there could be a game, and I would actually be surprised if there isn't, where he makes a play that's like 55, 60 yards that can maybe help Nebraska get over the top. So it's not like disappointment. It's just like it hasn't quite hit yet, and I wonder if that's around the corner. Obviously, Ja'Cory Barney's taken some of that,
Absolutely. I'm gonna go a little bit different here. First, I'm gonna ask you this question: are you guys aware that Ty Robinson already has career highs in tackles for a loss, sacks, havoc plays through 6 games in his final season here relative to the rest of his career? Like, is that known?
Yeah, the tackles for loss number I knew. It feels like he's making the plays that he didn't make.
Yeah, I think for me, it has stood out to me because I think he is playing at a level that I didn't know that he could really get to be honest. I thought at the end of last year, he was pretty good and was disruptive, but I never thought that he would be a guy, if he were to just double his numbers, that's an outstanding season as a guy who goes up routinely against 2, sometimes 3 people if the tight end is chipping. So he has had a fantastic year already on that defensive line, and they're going to need every bit of what he has in him over these final 6 games. I don't know the numbers are going to look as good by the end of the year as they look on your per game basis right now. But Ty Robinson has been really, really good. And I think people feel like he's been good, but he is playing at the highest level of his career by a considerable margin. And I go back to just that Rutgers game. Like he made several big plays inside of that game. Some of them, are obvious, like the tackles for a loss or the big sack or what have you. But he also does a really nice job of eating space and allowing your linebackers to come in and fill. It felt like that defensive line, once they were able to stop over pursuing, they took Rutgers' running game and they just completely shelved it. Like they couldn't run the ball anymore. And he was a big part of that. And so I think what Ty Robinson has done, in a year where John Bullock has been fantastic and Nash Hutmaker has been really good again. And, I don't want to say it's been lost in the shuffle because I think people recognize how good he has played. I just want to point out that it's even better than at any other point in his career, and it bears out statistically. He has more sacks, more TFLs, more havoc plays, and he's already got three pass breakups on the year as well by just getting the big paw up there in the air. I think he's blocked a kick earlier this year, so he's done a lot for Nebraska in just 6 games, and I'm fascinated what those next 6 are going to look like. All right, we'll try to go through this quickly. Brunch, give me one player you think has to play at a high level, at a really high level for Nebraska to try to win 3 games next season. Or not next season, geez. To win at least 3 games out of their final 6.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would not have guessed that Nash Hutmaker has more tackles than Ty Robinson right now, but he does.
Yep.
He's got him by 2. And it felt like Rutgers was the first time that Nash was making like those big splashy plays, like you noticed him a lot more. I think if he can raise his play even more, and I think he's trending in a positive direction, I think that would be huge for Nebraska just based on some of the opponents they have on the back half of the schedule. Because if you get those 2, Robinson and Hutmaker, wrecking shop, that defense has a chance to do some things in the second half of the season. So I think him finding that next level is really important for this defense. And it felt like right before the bye, he was starting to get to that.
BC?
I'd say Isaiah Naylor. I mean, I think we've seen what he can do, but like he's that type of, I think, game breaker guy who can give you those 1 or 2 explosives that put you over the top in a 1-score game. And so like on Saturday against Indiana, like he's the type of player. I could totally see him getting loose for a 40-yard plus play or something like that you have to have on a 3rd down, or, he's going to have some more 50-50 balls where he's going to have to win them. And so we already know he's good. If he can be great, it could tilt a game or 2 Nebraska's way.
I'm going Jamari Butler for a lot of the reasons that Brunt's kind of laid out. If you get another guy playing at a high level on that defensive line, and I think he's been a little banged up, I think the best is still to come for Jamari Butler. But I think he could be, again, another havoc guy, another difficult person to block, someone that can help with the pass rush, help against the run. Versatile player. If you get that version of Jamari Butler for the final 6 games, Nebraska's defense, which has been good, will be able to handle some of these better offenses on their schedule. Last thing here, give me the game of the final 6 you're most excited about that Nebraska is going to play. Last 6 games, 5-1, 6 games ahead of them. Brunts, who are you most excited to see Nebraska take on in their final 6 games?
That Wisconsin game, I'm intrigued by.
Since they look like a totally different team in the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, are they right? Are they kind of Kenny Banning Nebraska? They're getting the benefit of Nebraska beating up the teams that they play beforehand.
Sure feels like it.
It's it feels like that's what's going on there. So I'm eager to see what happens when Nebraska is not giving Wisconsin a cushy time slot, because I think they'll be that'll. Those games are always close, but it feels like a really interesting matchup of 2 teams that it's almost like Nebraska's trying to be a little bit more of what Wisconsin used to be than what Wisconsin is doing now. So I'm eager to see how that plays out, but that'll be a big one, I think, towards the back half of the schedule.
BC?
Ovaltine. Why don't they call it Roundtine?
Any word.
Yeah.
Gold, Jerry, gold.
I'll say the game right in front of us. This is a game that shifts like how we're going to view the rest of the season of what could be. Like it becomes, if Nebraska wins it, people are going to talk pretty big. And if they lose it, it's going to be one of those deals where, oh man, you got to make sure you get to 6 wins, but if you can take one big swing, you knock out 2 big TV graphics on one day. The top 25 drought that stretches to 2016 against Oregon, where they haven't beat a team in 25 straight games it's ranked, and the bull drought that stretches to 2016. So it would be a massive win in a big time slot, obviously setting up an even more like spotlighted game against Ohio State. So maybe not the game people would have guessed in August, but it's the game we have, and it's a pretty exciting one now.
I'm going to go with Nebraska at USC because I think right now Nebraska is a better football team. and I'm curious to see what both of these teams look like. USC still kind of got to work their way through their first go around in the Big Ten. They still have to kind of figure out what they want to be and how they're going to win some of these games. I think Nebraska's positioned well to play against that USC team. I think they can take advantage of things on both sides of the ball. A game that I thought was going to be interesting before the year. I'm really excited for that.
Yeah.
I think Nebraska has a big chance to go into an environment like USC, and I expect that they're going to be ready for that game in November. But I think it's a good spot for Nebraska. I really do. I don't know that people would have thought that before the year, but I'm looking forward to Nebraska USC, and who knows, that might even be like a 10 p.m. local time kickoff.
I think it could be. You know what's interesting? There's not like UCLA is the game. Everyone's like, okay, Nebraska can handle that one. If you've been watching UCLA closely, they're like they're not a dumpster fire. They
can play one to two good quarters and then they go away.
Yeah, like they stress Minnesota, which I think has honestly been turned into a solid football team. Has a win over USC, and they battled against Penn State and LSU. So I just bring them up to say, like, of these 6 games, there's not just like one where you can afford to have the details be missing, or otherwise it could be a sad day for you. So it is pretty interesting, and I think what we saw on Saturday was just further confirmation, not that it was needed. This college football, especially the Big Ten and SEC, it's becoming more like the NFL.
Oh, yeah.
Every year, every week, it gets a little closer to it, where you just expect close games. And it's what we were talking about earlier with the 2-minute timeout and how you handle that stuff. That's what is going to settle winning teams from losing teams. And so it's going to be really fascinating to see who does that stuff the best.
Yeah, and it's not even just the 2-minute timeout. It's also that middle 8, which is such a huge NFL, mindset. If you win the middle 8, more often than not, you're going to win the game. I feel like Nebraska has done a good job this year of playing that middle 8. They've also had some moments where they've let it get away from them. And if they can handle that against a team like Indiana coming up here on Saturday, I think it really propels you, especially if you're getting that ball at the end or at the start of the second half, Brian, and you're able to play smart 2-minute offense and get a field goal or get a touchdown on the board and score right before half, right before you're getting that football. There's just an element of control that you can exert there that I don't know that previous Nebraska teams really ever focused on that as much. I know that Rhule coming from the NFL, that's such a big deal there. And I feel like Nebraska's gotten better at it. They weren't good at it last year, but I feel like they've gotten better at it as time has gone on.
Nebraska's got to become a much better team, though, coming out of the half. I mean, they've had really good second quarters, and so they have to complete the second part of what you're talking about and have those drives right out of the break where you have a 9-play drive, maybe like you had to start the game. And so that's going to be everything this week. Red zone stuff's going to be everything. Indiana's great in the red zone. We'll get into all that in the hype cast, but that's going to be winning and losing, those all of it adding up, and 12 different little things. Do you make 7 or 8 of those 12 things go your way, or does the other side do it?
It's fun to be in this position. You look at the next 6 games ahead, and there's a lot of storylines of all of them. There's good teams that Nebraska is going to face. It's going to be some fun environments. We've clamored so long for Nebraska to have a team that's at least respectable. And now you're sitting at 5-1 with a bunch of opportunity in front of you. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this can go, and it's exciting. I mean, you so much prefer this to what we have seen and where we have seen Nebraska in recent years when we get into the middle of October, and you're just hoping they can right the ship. Well, I think the ship is righted. Now you're hoping that you can prove that you're actually better than some of these teams where maybe you think you are on paper, or maybe you think that you can match up finally for the first time in years. It's going to be an exciting, we get a little break in there. It's 3 on and then 1 off and then 3 on. But these next 7 weeks, Brian, I think are really huge for the future of what the Matt Rhule era can be. And a big, big opportunity you'd like to see Nebraska not blow. And I'm not talking about just getting to 6th win. I'm talking about having a chance to get to 8 or 9 wins to prove that you can be a program that you want to be and really kind of set yourself up to go forward. I think there's a lot of opportunity out here, and I'm very excited for it. I can't say that has been true a lot of Octobers in recent memory.
Opportunity in a true sense too. Like sometimes we've used that word, or I have, about games like where Nebraska's punching up 2 weight classes against like a Ohio State type of team that frankly,
2019, for instance.
yeah, it's just not an even match. And you actually have games here in the second half where you're like, yeah, I could see that. Like you brought up USC. I mean, that's a game where I think the majority of people would favor USC. But you go there and play well. You can definitely have a shot at that. Indiana's like a perfect game in the sense that they're a really good team, or a good team at least, but they're beatable. Like it's a game you can go get. You don't have to play 3 shoe sizes bigger. You just go do your job well and you can get out of there with a win. It's very possible. And so I feel like Nebraska's let a lot of games like those sort of slip through their fingers in recent years. Colorado, they did not this year. That was a game against a team you could beat on a big stage, and they took advantage of it. Then they kind of gave one back against Illinois. So now, don't give one back again. And Indiana's it would be such a big deal, I think, to go get that one and also get that 6-game discussion just out of the way. Like there it is.
Move on.
It's over. Let's see where it goes now. That sort of thing. So that's why it's so big to me.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Michael Bruns had to depart a little bit earlier. Brian Christopherson, Mike Shaver, we're Husker247. We invite you to check out everything we have going on at Husker247.com. We'll have the Hypecast coming a little bit later this week to really get you going for that Indiana game. And we have Max Olson from ESPN who will be joining us this week for the Hypecast. I'll already let you know who the special guest is. If you're on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. If you listen just through podcast, be sure to subscribe. Get that directly downloaded to your listening device. We appreciate you checking out what we have going on with Husker 24/7. For everybody else, we will be back later this week with more Husker 24/7 content.